listening to Give God 90, where we're not afraid of the tough biblical questions, because we will dig through the language, the culture, and the history to find the truth revealed in the words of our Creator.
Hello, everyone. We hope you're having a good day wherever and whenever you are listening to this. My name is Terry Mitchell, your host for Give God 90. Sitting in her supervisor's chair is Myra.
Hello, everyone.
And today we're going to continue with Proverbs 31. I want to welcome all the new people who are listening. I know there's a few probably listening to this series because of the title, A Virtuous Woman Deserves a Righteous Man. We're at part 4. And we thank everyone for tuning in. If you are new, check out GiveGod90.com. There's all kinds of fun things there. You can learn about our videos and our books. The videos are free. The books you have to pay for. Please do us all a favor and order them through a local bookstore so everybody makes out a little bit better there. If you like what you hear, we really appreciate hitting those likes and shares and notifications and all those good things. You are welcome, if you have the Spreaker account, you're welcome to leave us a comment like so many people do, or find us on one of the many social media places we're at. You can contact us privately there, or there is a contact page on the website as well. If you want to do it that way, that's absolutely fine. I know, I'm not sure if I capsized any boats the other day, but I think I made some of you seasick. So if you are one of those people who might be feeling a little queasy, then maybe you need to. It's kind of tough sometimes when people get hit with reality and they hear things out of the Bible that are not what they're used to. I had a couple people questioned some things and hopefully got that squared away. And I also noticed I lost a couple of followers along the way too, and that's perfectly okay. They'll be back because they will. When you promise to love and follow the Creator more than your own traditions, even though the traditions you've been taught may have been taught to you by someone that you loved and trusted, and you see it right there in the Bible, it kind of tends to make people stop and think a little bit. Their first reaction is, well, I don't agree with you, and that's fine. You don't have to agree with me. I'm not asking you to agree with me. I'm asking you and suggesting strongly that you agree with what's in the Bible. So I wanted to kind of put that out there so, you don't agree with me. Go research it for yourself. When a man and a woman enter into a marriage covenant, and I'm not talking about the civil unions that most states require even churches to perform now. And I'm not talking about homosexual marriage. I'm talking about a man and woman getting married in a covenant relationship. When they form that covenant relationship, and they go through the proper steps to do that, when that happens, it's not like a lot of Western civilizations might think it is. Thank you, Annie. You're absolutely right. Sometimes people do need time to process. Thank you. Western civilization teaches us a few things that it's just not a biblical marriage. A lot of people think it's you and me against the world. That's not what a marriage is. It is us, husband and wife, working together in unison as one with our Creator guiding us so that the family, that new family unit that is formed in marriage, will be able to benefit. And not just benefit themselves, but benefit the people around them. A lot of people think marriage is 50-50. It's not. Each person needs to bring 100% of themselves into a committed relationship. They bring their best skills, their best talents that our Creator gave them, and they need to use them to the best of their ability. When one of us is having an off day, when one spouse is having an off day and they're not able to give 100%, our Creator will reach into his bag of whatever it is that he hands out, and he's not going to give it to the one that's having a bad day or an off day. He's going to give it to the other one. And he's going to say, here is your spouse's, what that person needs to make them whole again. You give it to them. Why does he do that? Because everybody's different. When you're in that type of a committed relationship, you work together. The Creator's there, and he will give the other person what you need and expect that person to give it to you in the best way that they know how. Sometimes that might seem a little awkward, but that's the way it works. It's kind of what I call God math, because God never runs out. He's always giving 100%, even if he has to reach in and give you more for the other person. He's still at 100%, right? Now, I can say, somewhat jokingly, that with Myra's recovery, I'm using more than my share of whatever I need to do, and then some, okay? Because she's not physically able to do the things that she usually would do, and I need to be able to do those things along with what I usually do. So, I'm kind of working both sides against the middle a little bit sometimes.
And you're doing a terrific job, too.
Well, I don't know about that. I saw some cobwebs today. I get worn down a little. I get a little growly every once in a while. But, the Almighty's going to give her what I need, and she is able, even in her recovery, to give me what I need in her own way. And for each married couple, that's going to be different. You need to figure out the best way to give what the other person needs to them. Sometimes it means just some alone time so that they're able to accomplish what they need to do, right? And sometimes it means being there, just being there. And, it might mean eating something that might not be as good as it usually is, although I don't think that's happened the last few weeks, has it?
No.
Okay. So Myra's going to read what I think I can get through today.
She makes sure that what she makes is good. She works by her lamp late into the night. She makes thread with her hands and weaves her own cloth. She welcomes the poor. She helps the needy. She does not worry about her family when it snows. They all have fine clothes to keep them warm. She makes coverings for her bed. Her clothes are made of linen and other expensive material.
And that comes from Proverbs 31:18-22. But let's look at verse 18, and as much as I really like the International Children's Bible that she just read that from, sometimes the way it's translated and edited is not really correct. The first part's not far off. It really means that she does the best she can. She tries to make certain that the skills she has are used to the best of her ability. And again, this is Solomon's way of teaching us how to apply these things to the marriage covenant. Neither the wife or the husband should accept poor craftsmanship. Being able to do good work begins at home. Now, I don't know about most of the folks in the world, but if you've ever eaten away from the home in a restaurant situation where it's a little nicer restaurant, and maybe you get a dirty fork, do you bring it to the attention of your server and ask for a clean one? If the people who were washing the dishes didn't do a good job, it makes the restaurant look bad. They get a bad reputation. And the same thing applies to a marriage. When one or the other fail to give their best efforts, it reflects on the entire household. When we need that she works into the night, that's where the issue is in this particular verse. It actually says in the original, she makes sure that her lamp is trimmed properly. Not in those words, but that is the implication of it. Her lamp needs to be trimmed properly so that it will burn all night long. Today, in most places, there's electricity, and it's not an issue. And also today, we have these things called lighters and matches. But in Solomon's time, we had to pull a stick from the fire to light a lamp. And then in the morning, when you needed to start a fire to cook with or a fire to heat with, you would take a stick and you would use the lamp light and you would light your fire. It's, not rocket science. It's how people lived until, just fairly recently, really. And we can apply that to our lives by making sure that we're ready for the next day, right? We're ready to meet the next morning with enthusiasm and energy, right? Well, some of us do. Some of us drag ourselves out of bed. But for the most part, we need to be looking forward to the next day. And that's what he's getting at here. We need to not dread having to get up. How many times in the Bible do we read, he rose early? Even when you have something to do that you don't want to do, look forward to getting it over with, right? Because putting it off just makes it that much more difficult. Don't procrastinate. You need to be able to, be ready to meet the next day with enthusiasm and with some energy. Verse 19 is really a poor translation, and many commentaries don't understand the real meaning of the verse. The King James translates it this way. She layeth her hands to the spindle and she layeth her hands to the spindle and her hands to the distaff. And this doesn't, relate to a whole lot today. Because what it's actually talking about is spinning thread from either wool or flax. Today, Solomon's time, there wasn't the thing called a spinning wheel, right? And people look at this and they think, well, we got to spin thread? We got to do what? She stretches her hands towards a distaff. Most people don't even know what that is today. And one of the commentary writers says it this way. In the former clause, kishore, which is the distaff, it occasions some difficulty with early translators who did not view the word as connected with the process of spinning. The Septuagint translates, she stretches out her arms to useful works. What a distaff is what the thread was wound on after it was spun. Whether it was wool, whether it was flax. With a spinning wheel today, it really helped a lot. What he's really, what was really being said is the Septuagint had it right. She wants to look for useful works. And I typically don't use or like the Septuagint for a lot of reasons, but here's one place they actually get it right. She looks for something useful to do. She wants to be productive. There's something we used to ask our grandchildren when they thought they were bored. It's, do you need to be occupied? When you have, I think that started when Zoe was about 9 or 10, maybe. And I'm bored. Well, do you need to be occupied? Because I can find something for you to do, right? There's a lot of times when I will be getting, after I go through the morning news and drink my coffee. You know, I need to get up and do something productive. Don't know what it's going to be yet, but I need to go do something productive. And that's what we're really looking at in that verse. You need to be doing something. You know, when Blair was learning her multiplication tables, we used a lot of different methods to teach her those, even before she started learning them in school. You know, sometimes it was watching those silly little YouTube videos where she learned to sing the multiplication songs with them. Sometimes it was just us, you know, out of the blue, sitting, eating lunch, doing something. What's 7 times 7? And she kind of get this look like, you just asked me that? But I can guarantee you she knows what 12 times 12 is.
Oh, she does.
You know, being productive doesn't need to be drudgery. You know, sometimes we can actually produce some fun or some enjoyment, and that's fine too. You look for the fun things to do too. But we need to use our time wisely, right? We don't want to waste time. I don't think I need to comment on verse 20, helping the poor and the needy is, well, there's lots of ways of doing that, and it's something we need to be doing anyway. You know, it's something that's strongly commanded for us to be doing, especially the widows and the fatherless. Verse 21 I really like. When it snows, she has no fear for her household, for they are all clothed in scarlet. Now, scarlet in this verse can also be translated as fine cloth. A family makes absolutely sure that everyone has food to eat and clothes to wear. Now, I understand that that can be difficult for way too many people in the world today. But, you know, even the poorest of the poor in the world are able to eat. It may not be gourmet food, right? It might not even be something you might like, but it doesn't have to be. When you're hungry, everything tastes good. Trust me, I know. I've been there. You learn to eat things that you otherwise may not have ever considered. You learn how to make a bag of rice last a very long time, right? You learn how to work more and eat less. And if you live in a temperate climate, you learn that there are plants that are edible growing everywhere. You know, you look around today in some of these various places, and I shouldn't say various places, various places like YouTube and those kind of things, and there's herbalists and different people out there that teach how to identify and forage for wild edibles. So providing food sometimes can be as easy as just going out to forage. You know, unfortunately for us today, in certain parts of the world, there are conditions that actually prevent people from going out to forage for food. You know, there's drought, there's war, there's terrorism. In the United States, some government regulations try to prevent that, which is absolutely nuts. When these things prevent people from having the ability to find food, that's a drastically terrible thing, and there are places like that in the world. But for some of those places, there are actually charitable organizations that offer humanitarian aid. This isn't a sidetrack. This is actually in my notes. When I was going through a rough time years ago before Myra and I were married, you know, let's face it, I was a white American male. All right, I didn't qualify for any of the programs back then that would offer assistance, and I never asked. I knew it was useless. I did without a lot of things until I was able to get back on my feet, start building over. I ate a lot of biscuits and rice because flour and rice were cheap, okay? It's just that simple. They were cheap, and I ate a lot of them. When Myra and I got married, you know, the bed I had actually came from one of the local motels that was changing their mattresses. So I scavenged some lumber and built a frame to raise it off the floor of the old trailer house that I was living in. Our kids didn't have designer clothes. They either had hand-me-downs from friends or thrift stores, and sometimes their good clothes came from the clearance rack specials at the local department store, usually the cheapest one we could find. But we were able to build a family, and a family isn't based on stuff. It's based on a bond that's kind of hard to describe. You don't build a family based on things. Today, a lot of kids think if they don't have the latest video games, if they don't have designer shoes, if they don't have this or that, or the latest cell phone, right? They got to have the updated cell phone, even though there was nothing wrong with the one they had. They've got to upgrade. They've got to upgrade. That's not what builds a family. That's not what keeps people happy. What keeps people happy and content's the wrong word, but what keeps people joyous is knowing that they can depend on family. Because, the old saying, blood's thicker than water, it kind of is, but you've got to have the kind of blood that you can depend on. Eventually, we were able to improve on those conditions. And we owned some clothes that were not pre-owned. Kids were able to get a good education and go to school. But the work ethic they learned is paying off too. Each of them have good jobs, and they're each in management positions. I'll let you in on a little secret. The clothes that I go out to work in still come from the thrift stores. They're still pre-owned. I'm not going to go out and buy, new clothes to get dirty, right? That's just kind of nuts, in my opinion. If you want to, you're more than welcome, if you can afford it. How are our kids able to learn how to have such a good work ethic, how to wind up overseeing other employees? Because we made sure that the needs of the families were met, not the desires of a child, not necessarily the desires of a parent, the needs of the family. You do the best you can with what you have been provided by our Creator. You do the best you can with the things our Creator provides for you. And in verse 22, it actually kind of does say she makes coverings for her bed. And her clothing is fine linen and purple. Tapestry is actually a better translation for coverings. She makes sure her bed is covered with something personal, something nice. Why? Why is it that well, in the United States we would call it a quilt, right? A quilt that you're going to sleep under needs to be pretty. Why did people spend so many hours? Some people, they do it with sewing machine now. But I don't know if you ever heard of the old quilting bees where they would sit around and they'd have the quilt stretched out on a quilt rack and the ladies would sew a quilt. Why was that such an important thing? Well, really, when she goes to bed and she sleeps under that quilt or that tapestry or that something nice, something pretty, she needs to feel good. And she needs to go to bed knowing that she's done the best for her household that day. And that is what helps drive that enthusiasm and that energy to meet tomorrow. But the better question in this verse is why her clothes need to be more fashionable, more fancy than the man's clothes. Now, I imagine there's a lot of ladies going, well, of course my clothes need to be better. I deserve it. Well, yeah, you do, but why? Men typically, look at, they don't look at the way the other men dress, right? Yeah, we want to look good, and we want to feel good about ourselves. But the old saying that the clothes don't make the man holds a lot of truth. No matter what profession a man might have, there are certain uniforms. I'm going to use the word uniforms for lack of a better word. There are certain uniforms that men are expected to wear. A military person might dress in a certain uniform. Even lawyers and doctors and, other office professionals, they're expected to dress a certain way, right? Truck drivers. You ever thought about a truck driver? They're by themselves in a truck, right? Does it really matter what they wear? Well, kinda, but not, to a man. It reminds me, Myra's mother the other day was talking about mechanics. Her brothers used to work on vehicles. And she was always talking about the typical stereotype mechanic always being kind of sloppy and dirty and greasy. Today, it's a little different. And I did remind her it was her grandson she was talking about because he's a heavy equipment mechanic and he works on heavy equipment. But today, you need to look professional. Yeah, you can still have grease and that kind of thing. It's expected from a mechanic. But you need to look professional. How do you look professional when you're filthy? Well, you're organized. A good mechanic might be covered with grease, but look at his tools. Typically, they're clean because that's how he earns his money, right? His clothes, that they're something you can replace, you can wash. But his tools, he wipes down, he keeps them nice. It's how he earns his money. And, hopefully the days of the old stereotype are kind of gone because without service industry, society can't function today. Men don't focus on clothes. Men focus on confidence. Think about that. Most men, they want to know that the person they're talking to knows what they're talking about. Are you sure that's accurate? And you focus on their face. You look at their eyes. That's what men focus on. We want to make sure that the person we're dealing with has the confidence to carry out the task at hand. It doesn't matter if it's a mechanic. It doesn't matter if it's a doctor. It doesn't matter if it's a lawyer. It doesn't matter. It can be a ditch digger. Can you handle that shovel the way you're supposed to, right? And I know a lot of people that can't. My nephew's a heavy equipment operator. And the laborers that he has working under him, it's hard to find people today that aren't afraid of a shovel handle, okay? Because, while the heavy equipment can do a huge majority of the work today, the fine stuff still has to be done by hand. Women, on the other hand, and I'm not being sexist here, this is a very broad generalization. Women focus on more than just confidence. They want you to look good while you're doing whatever it is you're doing, okay? Women want form and function most of the time, right?
Right.
Am I on track here?
Yes.
Okay. Think about that. You can have a dining room table that is functional. Most guys would just kind of wipe it off and call it good. But, most women are going to polish it, right? There's a lot of men out there that will if it's something special to them. But most of the time, for a man, it's, I'm using it every day, I'll just wipe it off. Women like form and function all together. It's all one package for them. And men, let's be honest. You want your wives to dress nice, right? We want people to look at her and think, how does she deserve him? Or maybe I said that wrong, right? Men want people to look at their wives and say, what did he do to deserve her? And it's interesting. It's interesting. Now, this isn't because, we want that eye candy on our arm, or that shouldn't be the reason, guys, okay? We want others to know that we're putting her wishes and her desires ahead of our own. It's really human nature for us to want to do something for someone else rather than for ourselves. If we think about doing something for ourselves, it's not that big a deal. But if you're doing it for someone else, you kind of step up your game a little bit, right? When Myra and I go places, even just to the grocery store, I want her dressed better than me because, well, let's face it, she looks better than I do anyway. But, I want people to know that by her wearing nicer clothes than me, she's important to me. Even when we didn't have anything, and even when our clothes were probably pre-owned by somebody else, and, the ones that we were wearing in public, we made sure they were clean, properly coordinated, and hers were always better than mine. Not because I'm putting her on a pedestal, even though she might deserve it most of the time, but because I want people to know she's important to me. And if you're married, man, I'm talking directly to you now. I don't care what religion you are, where you are in the world. I don't care how much money you have or don't have. I don't care who you are. If you do not want everybody to know how important your wife is to you, you have a serious problem on your hands. Because if everyone, especially your wife, thinks she's not important to you, she's not. And that is a very, very serious problem. Sure, you can say you love her. You can even show your love for her. But is she important? How does she know it? How does everybody else know it? You might not be able to you might not be able to afford the most expensive clothes for her. You might not be able to afford whatever the latest designer things are. You might need to wear something from some charitable source. But guys, make sure hers is better than yours, right? She probably deserves at least that for putting up with you. Just like Myra deserves it for putting up with me. She's that important. That's why women have, throughout history, have always, had fancier clothes and dressed nicer than men. And it's why Solomon reminds us to apply that to our lives. And we still need to do that today. Next time I'm going to finish up Psalm 31, I hope. I'm pretty sure I can get through it. But did you have anything you wanted to add to all that today?
Thank you for joining us tonight. We'll see you on Monday.
Absolutely. Until then, many, many blessings, everyone.